welcome to another episode of Conversation with a Chef. I'm Jo Ritty and I love sharing with you the conversations I get to have with talented and passionate chefs. It's the backstory, if you will, to the food they're putting up. I begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, traditional custodians of the lands and airwaves of Naarm where this conversation takes place. Land which was never ceded. Land where communities came together to eat seasonally, locally and without exhausting resources. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and rising. Today I'm talking to Natalie Jefferson. Nat is passionate about food and keen to share that passion with others. After years in kitchens in Melbourne and London and a long stint running her own café, Nat has taken a sidestep into the kitchen of our food studies department at school. You can imagine my reaction when she was introduced at a staff meeting as the new food studies assistant and former chef. I made a beeline to talk to her. Recently, my Year 7 French classes have been learning about food and ordering in a restaurant, and we took them down to the food studies department for a tasting session, which they, of course, loved. Nat and the food studies teacher Jennie did a glorious job bringing food vocabulary to life and leading the students through eating with the senses, as well as some interesting facts about the various dishes. Food really does bring people together, and it brings so much joy. And that's what Nat loves about hospitality, cooking for others, and now she's sharing that with students. Hi Nat.
Hello Jo, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm good.
Well, let's just situate ourselves. So we're sitting down in the beautiful food studies department at Camberwell Girls, which is nice. I feel like I'm doing a bit of, co-curricular but co-life because I've brought my outside life into my school life.
Yeah.
But I was really keen to talk to you because you're so passionate about food.
Yes.
And I know that you obviously have a background in hospitality. And now you're here, lucky for us.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know where it all started and I guess what your journey has been.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Did you always know you wanted to work with food?
I grew up in a household, with a very passionate mum. Mum cooked all the time, but Mum also would buy. She'd buy magazines, food magazines, and she would just try different things every week. So she was very adventurous. She was a classic home-trained cook. So, I came home to Amy Johnson's slice, which is an old-fashioned slice that she would have in her Tupperware. It was like a lemon cake with jam and layers of jam and currants and lemon icing, and she would make those old classics, which later on I'll talk about, but they all went into part of my menu into my cafe, a lot of those classics as well. So I grew up with food all the time, and she would also take me to restaurants.
Oh wow.
So Mum would quite often say, let's drive to Sydney.
Oh.
And here's a restaurant that's opened up. Let's go and have a meal there. And I mean, I was very lucky. I was very privileged and lucky to be able to do that. And she would just encourage this side that I had, and also encourage that, that side, mother-daughter side too, where we could relate as well at that teenage years. They were pretty strict parents. Yeah. So food always brought us together at home. So that's how it started, I suppose, the passion.
Yes.
And I would cook meals like most nights of the week, or I would do salads and things. I would just want to do it. Yeah. I just enjoyed it.
I guess you got that from your mum, but what is it about food and cooking for people that you do enjoy?
Well, I think that sort of, I always loved doing things for other people. I think that was just inbuilt in me. I think I was born like that. And it continues, you can see it continues on still into my life. Yeah. And I think food is a beautiful way that you can pass on gratitude to people and enjoyment, and it just brings people together, and it's fun. So, my early life at home really developed that interest in cooking. And then I was at school, I went to Wesley, and they had home ec, and I just loved it. I was good at it and I loved it much more than the academic side of things. I just enjoyed it. And I can see that in the students here at Camberwell Girls. They relax, they have fun, they can be creative, and they can just let their shoulders sort of down and just, if it comes naturally, there's a space here where they can just flourish. And some students really do have that ability to just, fly. They can multitask, and you can see right from early on that they get it. They just get it.
So do you think that's really interesting? Because I love cooking, but I feel like I didn't have much of a background in that. I did do a lot of the cooking at home just because Mum wasn't a good cook.
Yes, yeah.
And didn't have much interest in it. I mean, she had definitely had her dishes that she did, and,
yes.
and we ate well, but
yeah.
it was very early on. She was keen for me to take over, and I did. But I feel like when I did some volunteering at Fair Share for a while.
Great.
And when you have an actual chef who shows you techniques, I was like,
just little tricks, yeah.
Because I don't think I'm very practical. So, but do you think some people just are or aren't, or is it about... Oh, okay.
Some people get it, they do. But then I have students in here that have never picked up a knife, don't know how to cut, and they're scared.
Yes.
And once you show them a little trick and a technique, or even just peeling a carrot, so many students will peel a carrot towards them and not away from them. Little things like that that just can make it safer for them, and then they feel comfortable. And it's like anything, practice. It's just practice, but... there's constantly always, like, it's funny when I have friends come over and do a little bit of cooking with me, I'll just say, I'll just do it like, why don't you do it like that? And they'll go, I never thought of that. That's so easy.
Yes.
So easy. Why didn't I think of that? Why don't you have a jar of sweet chilli in the fridge and just, use that for the month instead of making up the dressing each time? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So logical things like that just come very easy. And I guess... Once I finished high school, and I remember sitting in the careers counsellor and them pretty much saying, well, what are you going to do? Because, all these pathways that are offered to you, which is nothing like what the students get now, they're not suiting you and your passions. And I had no other options. So my mum actually looked up a restaurant in Melbourne that were a kind of like an ambassador for a hotel management school.
Oh.
Yeah, in Switzerland.
Oh.
So I actually went to Switzerland and did hotel management.
What?
Yeah. So I did a year at uni.
That's amazing.
In sciences.
Yeah.
And went, I just can't do this anymore. This is not for me. And Mum said, well, check this course out. Now, there was no internet, or we couldn't research anything. Mum basically saw an ad in a paper and said, what about we go talk to this lady? And then this lady just pretty much sent me off to Montreux. So,
what?
Yeah, so I did hotel management.
Wow.
And, of course, the facets of hotel management are front of house, kitchen, and then, back of house sort of operations, so the 3 sections. And, of course, the food side of it I absolutely loved. And you do a stage as part of your training. So you go into, it's like work experience, and you go in and work in a hotel, and I did that in London. And I loved the cooking side of it, but I hated working in hotels. They were just, it was production line, but you were cooking French classic food, but I just knew that I needed to learn how to cook properly, and I needed to do an apprenticeship. So that's when I started writing to restaurants in Melbourne. This is back in early 90s. And I wrote to hundreds of restaurants in Melbourne to apply for an apprenticeship. And I was a little bit older as well. So I was probably a bit more mature in what I was thinking, where I was going. And I wrote to restaurants. I got 2 trials. One was actually at Lynch's back in the day, where I shucked oysters all day and went, oh my gosh, really? But, is that what I'm going to be doing?
Yeah.
And my hands were just raw. Like, I'm talking about 15 hours of just shucking oysters all day. That's what they made me do, which is fine. I coped with it, but I went, I don't think I want to work for these people. And then I actually got a call back from Walter Burke, who owned Walter's Wine Bar, Maria and Walter's. And I did a trial, and he said, you can start tomorrow.
Wow. And
that was it. I didn't have a choice. He said, you want the job, you start tomorrow. And enrolled me in Preston TAFE, and I started my apprenticeship. Yeah. And he was not a trained chef, but he was a very creative, clever man.
Yeah.
And Maria and Walter's was a little restaurant in Rathdown Street in Carlton.
Oh.
And he was a ballet dancer, he and his wife, and they opened up this restaurant. So he taught himself to cook, and he opened this restaurant that was very classic, very, velvet chairs and beautiful...
Where was it in relation to, say, La Luna or...
further down towards the Commission Flats.
Oh, okay,
yeah. Down near... it's right opposite the Commission Flats, a little bit further towards the city, halfway to the city. On the left. I'm trying to think of... There is an Italian restaurant, I'll think of the name for you, Joe, that is possibly still there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I worked with Walter. He took me on as a mature age, so I actually sort of skipped first year and became a second year apprentice. And I ran this restaurant kitchen with Walter and one other chef who was very clever.
So when you say classic, what kind of food were you
So we're
cooking?
talking seafood quenelles and, with champagne sauce. And because Walter was very passionate about, he's one of the first goat's cheese makers in Melbourne, so we would get goat's milk delivered through the back laneway and pumped into the bath out the back, and we'd make goat's cheese.
This is cinematic.
Yeah, it was so crazy.
Wow.
It was like nothing, like it was he wasn't like, back then, the Stephanies, who I worked for later on in my apprenticeship, and Walter were, they were self-taught, and they were passionate, clever, and it was the start of we were in a time in Melbourne where nothing was bought in. You made bread yourself. Quinces were coming in, antipasto platters were just starting to happen. It was a real turning point in food. There were no one did breakfast, so it was very classic restaurants. You went for dinner and you had a beautiful meal, and this is what Walter was all about. And he also was very passionate about wine, obviously, which is when he went on to run Walter's Wine at Southgate. And every dish had a wine or a champagne base in it. So, we would make soufflés every night. Passion fruit soufflés, I remember. We do them to order in a copper bowl with a whisk.
Amazing. I
have memories of just thinking, I want to die because my arm's killing me from whisking by hand. But you made your own ice cream,
Is there a technique for whisking? I'm just thinking about the copper
Yeah,
bowl
you've got to use your wrist.
Yeah, but
can't use your arm.
So in the Mont Saint-Michel in France, they have this Mère Poulard, and she makes these omelettes, but apparently they say that they do a figure of eight.
Yes, we were taught figure of eight.
Cool, that feels
figure
very...
of eight. I know. And you use your wrist, you don't use your arm, because if you get a sore arm, then you're not doing it right. So you've got to use your wrist. But of course, if you're an apprentice, it's like those muscles are not developed. And you develop, as you cook, you develop these arm muscles, chopping, even standing. You just develop, like people say, how do you stand for 14, 15 hours a day? You just do. You just learn to... you learn to, spread your legs apart while you're standing at chopping board if you're tall, or raise your chopping board. You learn little techniques to help you, just like in any industry. Yeah. But you just do it.
Yeah.
And I used to work 6 days a week for Walter. Sometimes he'd forget to pay me. I'm sorry, Walter, but he would. And it was tough. And you would go to trade school on your day off, and then you'd go and work that night. Yeah. So that was your day off.
How long were you there?
I was there for 2 years with Walter, and then I moved because he actually closed Maria and Walter's down and opened up Walter's Wine Bar. So I did work for a very short period of time at Walter's Wine Bar, but it was a different scale. It was when Southgate first opened, and we're doing pre-theatre. We were doing 200 covers. Then we do dinner, same amount, and then we do post-theatre. So you're doing about 600 or 700 covers a day, and it's a different scale. So he was starting to buy cakes in. That's not the story, because he encouraged me to start my own cake business from home. So I used to supply him cakes. I was always entrepreneurial. Yeah. Like I always took on a lot more responsibility than I was probably, my role involved, but I just naturally did it. I had a father who owned Jefferson Ford. He was a businessman. He was self-made and has 400 people working for him now. So I grew up in a family of business-minded, passionate cook, and you can see the combination just was really good for me as a fit when I bought my first business.
And when was that?
So, well, I started Natalie's Cakes to start with, which I did from home. In those days, you could do it from home. There was no tax, no GST, no health department checks, and Walter said, just start making cakes for the wine bar. And he threw me into it, and I just delivered cakes all over Melbourne, up into the Dandenongs. It was such a big learning curve because I was also working full-time at Walter's and also doing Natalie's Cakes. You can see that was just my...
Yeah.
I was very driven in that area of just trying different things. And you can see I'm not afraid to probably try things. And I think as a business person, you need to just not overthink things and just go for it sometimes. And then going back then, so I ran Natalie's Cakes and then finished my apprenticeship for Stephanie Alexander. And again, that was in her last years at Stephanie's, and that was a tough job. Under Jeff Lindsay, you did what you were told and you just put your head down and stayed out of trouble. I still remember my first day, they put me into the pastry section and the pastry chef went on holidays and she gave me a few hours rundown, and I was only a third-year apprentice and I had to run the pastry section. So it was...
Pastry's the hardest.
Oh my gosh. There was this one classic day, right? Every Sunday we would cook centre table, which was like an antipasto, but Stephanie's version of it. And you would have to cook fresh sourdough baguettes every morning. And I'd never, ever cooked sourdough before, so I'm following the recipe and I throw the starter in, and I didn't keep some of the starter.
Oh no!
So it was a classic.
Yeah.
I was one of those chefs that made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
To never do that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And would figure it out. And I remember Jeff Lindsay coming in on the Monday and saying, "All right, we've got to make sourdough today," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no problem." And I get to the recipe and it says, I need 100 grams of the starter. And he's like, where's the starter? And I'm like, that went in yesterday's.
How long had they had the starter?
Years.
Oh, no.
Now you could buy a starter from a bakery. But back then, I thought he was going to kill me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he pretty much, told me my life was over.
Oh, no. Yeah.
One day he said, you've got to butcher a whole lamb. You're going on to the butchering section tomorrow. Figure it out.
What? Figure it out?
So I did. I went down to the local butcher and I spent a whole day, I think it was on a Sunday, and I was starting on that section on a Monday, and I learnt how to break down whole animals because I had no idea.
Well, how would you?
No.
And they don't teach you that?
They do, but they're busy.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of time. And
but
also I like to know before I start.
At trade school, though?
They do, but nothing like that.
No. Yeah.
I mean, you learn your classics and your sauces and things.
Yeah.
And that's where it's very interesting now, stepping into a school and seeing these techniques that, the students are learning, and it's time to get modern. It's time to modern things up. So...
But it's interesting now because I've spoken to chefs about the fact that, as you said, they don't have time now, but they don't... I still love the people that are breaking down animals and using all of the animal, or filleting fish and all of that stuff. But I think a lot of them, now that
they just buy it in
now that the hours are regulated,
I know.
they don't have time to pay people to do that, so they're getting it in, and then it's a different quality.
Oh, it's
product,
totally different world of cooking now. Totally different. I mean, I trained with chefs who, and I had two of them in my cafe, so I went on to then to start up our kitchen table. I ran Replete in Hawthorn to start with, and that was when breakfast was just starting to get... It was happening, and I worked for Michelle and Justine were my boss at Replete, and they were from New Zealand. They own Cremorne Bakery now, and she ran this amazing business. She's such a good businesswoman, and working for her was fantastic. We pretty much put breakfast on the map at that place, and did that for, I think I was there for nearly 10 years before I bought my business, Our Kitchen Table, which I had for 16 years.
Wow.
And one of the chefs, long time in business, very long time in business. Yeah. And, we weren't whiz bang, wow, here we are. We just chipped away. We just put our heads down and we just worked really hard. And we did good, simple, classic food. We cooked everything ourselves.
Yeah.
And getting back to trained chefs, I had a chef, Glenn, who worked with me at Replete and at our kitchen table for almost the whole time. He had that classic training, so we knew how to, we could do anything. We could fix a split sauce. We can bone out a chicken if the chickens come in and they're not boned out. We can do, we can cook anything. Somebody asks us to cook something for a special catering job, we can do it. And I think that's the difference in the chefs nowadays. They've got no idea because they buy stuff in.
Right. Yeah.
And
it must have been hard though going from a la carte or fine dining
restaurants,
and dinner food because I think this is still what's happening now, is that people expect to pay a certain amount for breakfast.
Yes.
But you still have to provide them with
it's still
excellent...
quality, interesting.
That's right.
So it's really interesting that you say that, because when I left the food industry, I'd done a bit of not the food industry, when I left the fine dining sort of scene, which was really Stephanie's, and then I did a stint in London working at Sally Clark's, but that was starting to go into produce like Philippa's.
Okay.
So that was where I started seeing that I could go into other areas which suited my style and personality, my creativity more, and the business side. I could see that fine dining, I just worked for Walter, who'd closed his little restaurant down and opened up Walter's Wine Bar. Then I finished at Stephanie's and finished my apprenticeship at Stephanie's, and she closed down. Restaurants were struggling. Fine dining was expensive and labour intensive, and things were starting to change. People were spending almost just as much on breakfast and lunch, and dinners were changing. So I saw this, but I also could see that you're still going to have to make chicken sandwiches in a cafe, to make money, because unfortunately 3/4 of Melbourne just want chicken sandwiches.
Well, apparently all that Melbourne wants are sandwiches right now. So how does sandwiches still keep on?
I know, because
there's more sandwich shops open now.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And I think back to that turning point then, and it was like my husband Kevin, who's a chef too, we used to talk about it because we both just love cooking. We love interesting food. But at Replete, we were restricted. Lucky we worked for a passionate, the owners were very passionate about food, and we could express ourselves in catering. But in the actual cafe, it was, we were one of the first people to put, corn fritters and hot cakes. I think we won an award for the best breakfast in Melbourne we had it for 8 years.
Wow.
But that's because it was new and different, and now everybody does corn fritters, everybody does hot cakes with lemon curd and strawberries. But back then it was very interesting, and we talk about making that change, and how a lot of chefs wouldn't go, we would have trouble recruiting and getting chefs to work for us that had quality training, because they just didn't think that cooking in cafes was special.
There was a definite turning point a few years ago where some of those fine dining, it was a whole wave of them.
They've moved into...
then it became... And to me, I remember saying to someone, it's a bit like people used to think film actors were the top kind of actor, and the TV actors weren't so good, and then the film actors started going into TV. I felt like it was the same switch where we all went,
It's so true. It's really interesting, the mentality now compared to 10 years ago.
And that must be about sustainability too, because you can't keep
it up.
Those
as you get older, you certainly can't keep it up.
That's right.
And also you don't need to. You can see that you can have a certain lifestyle. Like when I bought our kitchen table, I remember my dad said to me, you got 10 days to get this place open. Otherwise, you get your $100 notes and start cutting them up.
Wow.
That's his mentality. And I still remember it, and he was right. Because we didn't do a business plan. We just went, we can do it. We're going to do it. And we're just not going to overthink it. And you see so many business people, the people that want to go into cafes and businesses, they'll never do it because they overthink it. And also, if you do the figures, it's a lot of hard work, not a lot of return.
So how did you get to the point where you knew it was time to move on from that?
Well, when I was at Replete, I knew that Kevin and I ran the kitchen together, so we always worked as a husband and wife team, very, very small areas.
It's amazing.
I know. And even at Walters and Miriam Walters, he was the head chef, I was the pastry chef.
Wow.
So we worked we've worked maybe 25 years together in tight spaces as well.
Wow.
And it became evident at Replete that he is like absolute perfectionist in the kitchen. He will not take any shortcuts, whereas I'm the money maker. I can churn out hundreds and hundreds of gingerbreads and shortbreads and make, I could do thousands of them and make them look beautiful, and they'll all sell. Whereas Kevin will do beautiful, intricate, gorgeous food for dinner parties, and people will just go, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we were a good team, we were a good combination, but I saw that we were starting to, there's the line, don't cross it. That's my section, don't come into my section kind of thing. Because, you're working all day together, and he was just annoying me because he's so messy. It's normal life, but we could see that, and I think this entrepreneurial side was coming out in me in Replete, where I pretty much was running the kitchen. We're pretty much doing everything for this business that sold for an amazing amount. And I thought, I can do this for myself. So I started looking. I found the premises, again, in the paper, café for sale in East Melbourne. There was only one that I knew of. Back then, there was no thousands of cafes. I knew it was in the suburbs, so it was a bit risky. Back then, suburbs were risky. We didn't have social media to advertise. So you needed a bit of passing traffic. I knew it was surrounded by schools. And I went, yeah, that's perfect. But they wanted too much for it. We couldn't afford it. We didn't have millions of dollars. We didn't have backers. And I come from a very proud family where you do it on your own. So I wasn't going to ask Mum and Dad to help me, because I thought, well, I want to do this myself. So we pretty much made an offer, and they said, no, take a hike. And then a year later, it was still for sale, and the price dropped in a quarter. So we went in and we took it over within about a month, and we pretty much took it over and went, oh my God, what have we done? Like, we had no idea on the business side of things, and the front of house side we knew how to do, but we didn't know really how to make coffee. We just pretended that we knew what we were doing, and we taught ourselves.
Yeah.
We just had to wing it. We winged a lot of things back then. We didn't even know how to transfer our liquor license, we just had to work it out. And I think when you start at the bottom like that and you work your way up, you make mistakes, again, making loads of mistakes to work out what to do. We did our own books. We did everything ourselves. We renovated ourselves. And we did it in 10 days, thanks, Dad. We did, though, and we may not have done it with whiz bang amazing, but it was very rustic. It was very cosy and comfortable. And that's really to the credit of the cafe that we just sold. It became, people loved that. They loved our home style cooking. They loved the feel when they came in. People used to say, I had a customer who invited me for dinner next week, and she said, I just miss, it was like coming home when I had breakfast there. I'd have the same thing, and I'd see you and Kev hop into the kitchen, have a chat. It was just, it's like coming home.
Yeah.
Her grandchildren, later in the years, we got to know them. We got to know people and their families. We saw people coming into the cafe that would come and eat, bring their parents, and then they'd go into, aged care facilities, and they'd bring them for lunch and things like that. So it was a really beautiful business. Yeah. And I miss that side of it. But I don't miss the taxes, Joe. I don't miss the stress of cash flow in small business.
And how did you go over the lockdown time?
We absolutely loved lockdown. With all due respect for people that struggled,
of course.
We absolutely loved it. We did so well. It gave us a little opportunity we're in an amazing position. So, if you can picture East Melbourne Central Park, it was like a theme park over there. There was just so many people walking. It was so busy. And you could see that in Melbourne. There were parts of Melbourne that stayed incredibly busy. We were very lucky. We were very, very busy. It was crazy. But we also gave us an opportunity to look at the business. Luckily, we were already doing take-home food. We'd been doing take-home food for 15 years. Yeah. And we just flew with it. We went, right, people are just pulling out chicken soups. We would make litres and litres of chicken soups. And we realised very quickly, because we always I think because we had to do everything ourselves in the early days, it wasn't hard for us to tighten things up, look at the business a bit closer and go, we're going to have to do everything ourselves to start with, and just because we don't know what's ahead. So we'll just pull everything back and see what happens, and then we can look after all our staff basically and get them back in and figure out what we're going to do. So it used to in the early days of COVID, it was just Kevin out the front making coffee, and myself. Daisy, our daughter, who would be homeschooling next to the coffee machine or in the kitchen with me. So for the first few weeks, that's what we did. We just brought it all back. We did the washing at home. We do the tea towels at home, things like that. We just didn't spend anything. We just kept everything very tight until we figured out what people wanted to buy. And it just took off. Within 2 weeks, all our staff were back.
Wow.
And we had a plan.
Yeah.
And we also could afford, like you were saying, fair share. We went, we're busy, but we're used to being really busy. So let's get in contact with some people like Fair Share. And we actually started supplying 400 meals a week to Fair Share.
Wow.
Which we would do in the cafe because you couldn't go on site. And we would get the community to, they'd be like, well, what's happening over there? Where are all these soups going? And like, oh, well, we're donating them to Fair Share. And, we need some labels written. Do you want to write the labels? So there was this community spirit, and we really involved people. A lot of older people helped us out that were bored and loved cooking. Yeah. So we started to see that we were going to be okay. And not only were we going to be okay, financially it was incredible. We were very lucky.
Yeah.
And I think that humbled us after COVID. We realised how volatile things were. And we'd had, our cafe when we bought it, the first 5 years were unbelievably busy. And then all these cafes started opening up around us, and you're just competing. And it's stretched. Even though you do good things and people come back to you, people try other places.
Of course.
And you're competing with so many places. And we just kept at it. We had to keep reinventing the menu. We had to keep at it. But there were definitely years where we went, gee, this is getting harder and harder. The overheads are so expensive. You've got to pay so much for staff with very average skills when you can do it yourself. So I think that COVID came at a time when we were like, 14 years into business then, and you start to sort of get a bit tired and a bit, not lazy, but, you haven't got your finger on the pulse as much. And it was a big wake-up call. And it was like, well, this is good. Let's look at it again, you know. I mean, my dad used to look at his P&Ls daily, and that certainly was not Kevin and I. My forte was not that at all, but we were doing that in COVID. And I think it's good for you to pull back a bit and not take it for granted, and it tightens things up, and you look at it a little bit differently, and then you go, I'm going to sell.
Yeah.
So.
And then moving into a school, was that
It was not planned. It so was not planned. But again, we decided to sell the cafe after 16 years. I had ageing parents, and I knew I needed to make a change. I actually had to move in with my mum, who has dementia, while my dad was in hospital with cancer. So it forced me I had to stop working, and Kev ran the business, and he had an offer while that happened, didn't even tell me. And I came home from a week with mum, which is so difficult, living with a parent with dementia. I came home and Kev said, we've got an offer for the business and we're selling. You need a break. And I need a break. We need a change. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think that I needed Kev to just sort that out, And so we were made an offer, and we then sold. Again, selling a business, I think I could absolutely sell anyone's business in Melbourne after what we went through with that sale. It was so stressful. So I think that there's all these other sides to owning restaurants and cafes that you have no idea about, and it can be incredibly stressful. And I think that I'd love to be there for people that are going through those stresses, because I could definitely give them some good advice. Because we've been through it all.
Yeah.
And anyway, we did settle eventually. and it wasn't like just a little cafe. You know, it had a liquor license, catering. It was a big business. We had 10 full-timers. So there was a lot of organising, selling it. And then I was like, what am I going to do now? And I really had no idea. Like, I would sit down with my 16-year-old and I said to Daisy, I haven't written a CV for 30 years. I don't even know how to do it. You know, I mean, I can figure it out, but it's a very different world out there. Am I going to stay in restaurants? It just didn't excite me working for someone else after working for myself for so long. So I thought, well, why not make a change? I've always loved the young kids at work. We'd employ juniors and they would always be working in the kitchen, and I loved teaching them. So I thought, I'm going to give something different a go. And my teenager helped me with that. Yeah. She would look through Seek for me and go, you can do all these things, Mum. You don't realise running a business how many skills you've got. And that was a really good learning curve, and you just got to be brave and go for it. I saw the advertised for food studies, and I thought, well, that's good. I know food. That's good. As for the rest of it, it was an assistant's job, which is, I knew I'd probably do it with my eyes closed, very easy. But I also knew it would be challenging, working in the environment of a school. And it definitely, I found the first few months because I got thrown into it. I didn't sort of get shown much. So I got thrown into it, and that, again, I'm used to that. So I work out things pretty quickly, and systems. But it's been a very, very big change for me, very stressful the first few months. And then I started to relax and realise that I was actually quite good at it. And I work really well with Jennie, the teacher here. She's been amazing because she's got that teacher side and then I've got the prac side. So really good combination. And then working with the students who I absolutely love.
Yeah.
It's the best part to teach young people to cook, to make. I think I made about 100 omelettes in my first week, just teaching students how to make an omelette. I mean, how fantastic to hear that they've gone home and made them at home.
Absolutely. And
that's what we need to be doing. We don't need to be teaching the white sauces and the brown sauces and blah, blah, blah. We need to be teaching interesting, healthy, fun cooking at home.
Well, I think I was speaking to Gabriel Gatti, and he has a big thing. He thinks it's every parent's responsibility to be cooking with their children. Yeah. And I think that there has been some generational gaps because I think, in some of the generations we've come through and food's been a lot easier to buy than to make.
Yes, absolutely.
And people are pressed for time.
Yeah.
So it's hard for people to pass those skills on. But I think that then breeds that, look at the awe that people have for MasterChef or whatever these cooking programs because, people don't necessarily have those skills themselves.
Right, yes.
And so I think, and there's a bit of a fear of cooking and getting it wrong or whatever. And I think it's great. And I just loved when we came in with the Year 7s and they just did all that beautiful French food tasting, and that was they were so into it. They loved it.
They love it.
I'm so glad we did that.
I'm so glad.
But having the Year 11 students, talking to them about it as well, I was like, I'm so glad that there are students who are taking it through to VCE because it's such a great subject.
It is such a great subject.
And it's really important too, and that knowledge that comes in behind it. So I'm really glad that, I hope that it picks up on the school again.
I hope so too. I think that Camberwell Girls has an opportunity to make it happen and encourage it. I think this is the way things are going. Like we have a lot of students that have different learning styles.
Yes.
And it's becoming more and more frequent. And I can tell you all those students are very comfortable down here.
Yeah.
They have a chance to shine and the pressure's off a little bit.
Yeah.
In a different way. I mean, of course, you get to Year 11 and 12 and you've still got all your food studies technical side. But as for the prac side, they just absolutely flourish and relax.
It's so satisfying when you create something. And I think too, when I was doing a PhD, I'd lived for a year in France, and I came back and and this was in the 90s as well, and I just set up in Christchurch. I just set up my own dinner party thing where I'd go into people's houses and just do like a 4-course French dinner with no training.
Oh my gosh, Jo, that's
but
fantastic.
I just loved the food, and people said it was good, but it would look. Now I just think, who did I think I was? But that compared to like all this reading and
Yes.
studying, and what do you actually have to show for, you know, like all these years of a PhD?
Yeah.
But when you see people who are just loving the food you cook, it's so satisfying.
so satisfying.
These students would love that as
Oh,
well.
they love it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I would love to, you know, to teach the students to make ricotta rather than
Yes.
buying ricotta. I would love those. They're the opportunities we need. We need those sort of opportunities, which relates into science and, you know.
Absolutely. But having Joe Varghetto, I went to a restaurant that he had, and he just came out, he'd made it, and he just came out with this big bowl of warm ricotta and just
beautiful.
did a dollop, and these,
Yeah.
and it was so
We never bought
delicious.
ricotta at our kitchen table in 16 years. We made it ourselves because it was better, easy, and it lasts longer. We're always throwing it out.
Yeah.
The commercial ricotta, as soon as you open it up, you've got it about 5 days.
Yeah.
You make ricotta and it lasts 2 weeks. So we are with those classic training. We know how to make everything, and I think it's having the time to show students to do that, but not just students in a situation like Camp Royal Girls. It brings all departments together. It has the opportunity to bring departments together.
That's right.
Which I wouldn't have done if I hadn't have done the French thing that we did. But I have to say, wouldn't it be great if we could actually get them cooking? You know, making the crepes together.
Well, that's right.
I would have loved that.
I feel like that was another logistical.
Yeah,
But in years to come, let's work towards
that's exactly,
that.
that's right. And even departments like you've got your professional services, your maintenance, and your teaching, and then your assistants. You've got all sorts of departments in a school, and it brings people together.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of people getting a lunch made for them, you know, we could, you know, do in small state. We could have a cooking class down here.
I think that's a great idea.
Oh, I mean,
is that possible? Because it's definitely something to. Because as you say, it does bring people together, and then you're making the food, and then you sit down and eat it.
It just lightens everyone up.
Really nice, yeah.
And it also mixes people up.
Yeah.
I did a class, a MasterChef pancake class last week with one of the teachers, and we had a spare section, and I said to the teacher, "Come on, well, you and I, we'll enter the competition as well, and I'll show you some things."
Yeah.
So it's fun, and it lightens things up, and it brings people together. And I think that's very important in a school. Having a business where I was down there working with all my staff, and I think I've got a good knack of bringing people together. And you sound like you're the same, Joe. You know, you just talk your way out, you know, into things, and you enjoy it. You've got some passion, and people just love passion. It can be about, doesn't matter what it's about, but they get excited. It's good to get people excited.
Yeah.
It's too easy to see the negative things, so why not get excited about things?
Absolutely.
And that's what I hope to bring here. And slowly, you know, I feel like I'm getting there.
Yeah.
So it's a really big change, but it's a good change. So yeah, that's Nat.
Thank you.
Oh, you are very welcome. I waffled on. Sorry, Joe.
I loved it. You better go and make your burgers.
Oh, no, I better go make my burgers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Conversation with a Chef with Natalie Jefferson. If you liked what you heard and you want to hear more stories from other chefs, I'm on Instagram at Conversation with a Chef. You can read the chat and become a subscriber at www.conversationwithachef.com. The good thing about being a subscriber is I feel loved because I feel like there's maybe people reading it. And the good thing for you is you get notified when new stories go up. I would love it if you told a friend about my chats, and of course you can follow me on Apple and Spotify podcasts, and I'm also on Audible and Amazon podcasts. Once again, thanks so much for listening. Have a great day et bon appétit.